To this live chat with Women Coach Educators. We're talking about today body image and the female athlete. And today I have with me guests Sue Ryan and Sarah Brady. My name is Raina Hoffbauer and I'll be hosting. I coach girls high school soccer and I also do futsal leagues, camps, clinics, and tournaments. And I'll have each of my guests introduce themselves. And Sarah, we'll go ahead and we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, I am Sarah Brady, the head coach with Iona Women's Soccer in New York. I also coach at the youth level at Larchmont Mamaroneck Soccer Club.
Thank you, Sarah. And Sue?
Hi everyone, my name is Sue Ryan. I am an assistant professor at Stony Brook University and I work in the graduate school here.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
On the youth,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was good. On the youth level, I work with Girls ODP and I work with a local soccer club, Stony Brook Soccer.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So when we talk about body image and the female athlete, it's such a broad topic. We're going to really focus on starting with female middle school athletes and how some messages impact how girls think about themselves. Sue, do you have any input on female middle school athletes and how body image can affect them?
Yes, absolutely. I think the most important aspect of this question is that just in a time in a girl's life that she's going from a girl to a young woman, her body is changing. And so she's acutely aware of those changes and to some extent can become a little bit more self-conscious. At the same time, if she's an athlete, she might be receiving mixed messages from society and from people who want her to be bigger, stronger, faster as an athlete. And then that causes, I think, great concern for the players.
And I actually have I have a daughter, and I remember when she was in middle school, she had a more athletic build, and which is great for athletes. I mean, she was strong and fast on the field, but when she would get to school, she compared herself to her peers, a lot of girls that were very, very thin. And I would hear that she would spend her lunch just eating packets of ketchup because she didn't want to appear to overeat in front of her school friends.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the main issues that we have because the athletes are, as we all know, utilizing a lot more calories during the day. So their caloric needs are much greater. So as they're sitting at lunch, eating to the needs that they have to make it through the afternoon practices or after their morning swim sessions, it's easy for there to be difference between what they're eating and what others are eating. And I think for all teenagers, but maybe specifically for girls, when you stand out and are different in some aspects, that can be challenging.
And so how do you think being involved in the athletic environment helps these girls with their eating habits?
Well, the one thing that I noticed with all the young athletes that I deal with is that they're very comfortable among their team peers, their team members. They go to pizza parties and they joke with each other about having 3 slices of pizza. They go to pasta parties and a parent will say, I've made 10 pounds of pasta. We couldn't possibly go through all this. And yet a group of young women can easily go through that in an evening. Whereas that's accepted and the norm for that group of athletes. So there's a great comfort level there. And maybe that's not the same norm in their everyday attitudes with their friends at the cafeteria at school or even at other people's houses who are not athletes.
And that's some great information. And Sarah, do you have any experiences with middle school athletes that you could weigh in on?
I do. I think working with the youth level of player, I'd only ever experienced, disordered eating complaints and people worrying about their weight when they were older. However, working with the younger group, I am noticing it more. I mean, there was a recent study conducted by the National Eating Disorders Association that stated, young females as young as 6 years old are aware of their body weight image. And I just think that's frightening. I think, the ages that are affected by the disordered eating is getting younger and younger. And, to conversations like this are going to help raise awareness and hopefully, help people become a little bit more enthusiastic about learning, about the signs, the symptoms, and how to manage those, because, 6-year-olds, that's pretty frightening.
Yeah, that is extremely young. And so as they move into adolescence, especially when you talk about the normal weight gain that happens, how do you think girls react, even maybe compared to boys, in viewing weight gain, which should be normal for them, but as they get older, it seems like they tend to have an issue with it?
Yeah, definitely. If you don't mind, Sue, I'll go first on this one. I mean, a lot of the research suggests that 15 to 21-year-olds are, the highest risk category for disordered eating. As a college soccer recruiter, that's who we're recruiting and that's who we're coaching. The age group 15 to 21, 22 is definitely our area where we need to be as expert as possible. So, it's very relevant to us. There's a lot more emphasis on the holistic approach to coaching now, which is not just the X and O and the physical elements, the social elements, the emotional elements are in there. The biggest issue that I've come up against at the college level is when we speak to players about fitness and improving fitness and, hitting higher standards, they always have the internal battle of body image versus capacity to perform. Coaches, we're trying to speak to our athletes about, hey, if you get fitter, you improve your capacity to perform. However, sometimes that message based on, the societal images and messages that Sue talked about earlier, a lot of that message is getting mixed up as, hey, your body image needs to change, your body shape needs to change. And that's where I've definitely found difficulty in communicating issues of fitness and hopefully they're interpreted correctly.
Those are actually some really good points. And I'll tell you that even I still play a little bit and work out. And even in my head, I have this idea that if I hit this weight, I'll be better able to perform than more maybe a body shape or tone. But I have to get down to a certain weight, and then probably beyond that weight, I can tone. So I think it still persists even today. And that's a great point about trying to bring it back to performance versus body image or weight. And Sue, do you have anything to add to this subject?
Yeah, I have two things. So the first piece would be, we have to understand, obviously, the difference between muscle weight, fat weight, weight that is going to help you with your strength, and weight that's going to hold you back. And so that's the composition of the weight. And the athletes certainly don't have an understanding of that. And as they get older, through college, I think it's easy for someone to add weight, but maybe drop in clothes sizes because they're more lean, they're more svelte, but their weight could actually increase. So I think helping the athletes to understand not just what's on the scale, but how they feel and how they perform, I think that's a really important factor, because weight could increase and performance increase at the same time. The other thing I'd like to add is that in my experience, most middle school groups of girls, if you really have an honest conversation with them, they are the ones that already know the girls that have issues with eating. They're the ones who watch the kids at the cafeteria table who throw away their lunches every day, and the parents have no idea. They're the ones who watch different things happening, different discussions. In all honesty, I think the parents and the coaches and the teachers may be the last ones to know. Sometimes I feel that way about many groups of athletes. We teach them to have each other's backs, and they don't know when it's appropriate to, quote, tell an adult about a problem, or maybe they don't think it's a problem. So I can tell you, I systematically discuss these areas with young players, and they will quite honestly give you information that can be extremely helpful to find things out before they become big problems.
That's really good advice. And so in thinking about that and identifying when there may be problems starting, say a player does end up losing weight, and what about maybe the positive reinforcement that they get from their peers and the people around them, and trying to make sure that the weight that they're losing, or even like you said, their body shape is changing, they're becoming more toned, how to make sure that they don't overdo it.
Right. So that's the concept of more is better. So I lost 3 pounds, 5 pounds. I'm a little lighter. People have noticed. I get a lot of positive reinforcement from friends, and without meaning to be difficult to their lives, coaches, teachers, grandparents are saying, "Wow, you look great. Wow, you look great." So then the athlete goes into the more is better category of, well, if I lost this and these things happened, then all of a sudden, if I lose more, it will get even better. And as we know, the body has a way to change that thermostat in your body, so you won't lose as much weight as quickly. And so then there's the need to eat less or exercise more, and that's when the problem comes about. This dates back to, unbelievably, caveman days, when people were locked in a cave, and there was no food available, and the thermostat in their body would shut down, so that they would require fewer calories to exist. So the body goes back into that, and that thermostat goes so low that then when they start eating again, they gain weight. If anybody who's ever done a yo-yo type dieting, that's what it's all about. So we have to teach them not to get to that point that they take in so few calories that they start that process.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, do you think that there are ways that you can help them not get into that process?
Yeah, I think I can speak from experience on our strategy and methods that we utilize at Iona. So we use fitness tests and composition tests, and we try and re-educate our athletes. So the minute you hear test, it's it's either a punishment or telling me I'm not good enough, right? That's what a lot of unfortunately the message has been. But we weigh our athletes. We weigh them before and after practice to show them how much weight they lose in fluid. We take body composition regularly throughout the year, and just to tell them, what, your weight may have gone up, but your body fat's gone down, and vice versa. And things like the fitness test, speaking from experience, I've had athletes who drop a lot of weight and then they perform worse on fitness tests. So again, we go back to that the capacity to perform, rather than, hey, society needs me to look a little thinner, my muscles need to pop out a little bit more. We always try and bring it back to that capacity to perform. As an athlete, you are aiming to be, physically capable of the next level. And if you're not getting the resources for that, if you're not taking in enough calories, if you're not taking in adequate rest, if you're emotionally stressed and you're wasting energy in that avenue, it's going to affect your performance. So we do try to re-educate and always use the phrase capacity to perform.
And that's great that you're able to do that at the college level. And it sounds like a big part of it is changing the language that we use when talking to our young student athletes. And Sue, is there anything that you would add to target the middle school, or even before? Like Sarah said, players as young as 6 years old are aware of their body image. What can we do with those younger girls?
Well, I think the biggest aspect here is that they're constantly receiving societal messages. There's a funny story about the doll, Barbie doll, that if you took the doll and made it into a 5'7" female, the body image of her body parts would be anatomically impossible. So, which is kind of an interesting concept, that young people, and that's changing now. They're changing skin tones and colors of dolls. There's a new Ken coming out that's actually been changed, and they're trying to do some of that imaging. But for a very long time, young girls are receiving certain messages, and that's important to them, as it should be in some areas. But when it conflicts with other things, I think the important aspect there is to give them positive messages, to talk about athletes in the media that maybe aren't what people would consider to be a typical young, thin only female. I think those bringing up those messages, taking them to arenas where they're seeing, you know, fit, strong women, I think are important messages. Take them to soccer games, take them to live events. I think those are as important messages because they're getting bombarded with TV, magazines, newspapers, with the opposite.
Yeah.
And Sue, do you think there is today a change in maybe some of the images that young girls are able to see? Is there anything in the media that you think is changing for the better?
Well, I'll tell you, I just came back. I don't want to be a movie critic here, but I just came back from the movie Wonder Woman, and there were images in that movie of the Amazons on the island that I have not seen before in any of the superhero movies that I've taken my children to. So I think that's encouraging. You know, I think that some of the top female athletes who are really happy with their body types. So you look at Venus and Serena Williams, who have clothing lines and jewelry lines and their image that they have. I think all of that is very supportive and very positive for young girls and women.
It's great that women, young girls especially, are able to see those types of images now. I can't remember a lot of positive female role models growing up in such a big way, especially a star of an action film coming out and kicking butt for girls everywhere.
Yeah, it's I think it's really important. You know, I was with a bunch of kids last night at one of my soccer practices, and a little boy had a Band-Aid of Wonder Woman on his knee.
Oh.
And I just thought, wow, that's you know, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I know my daughter
great.
has worn her fair share of Spider-Man and Batman and, you know, Captain somebody Band-Aids.
Yeah, that's great. And so, Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? How have you seen things change from when you first started to now?
I honestly think the biggest changes are driven by social media, both positive and negative. You know, we're at the age of technology at our fingertips, so it's very easy to access information, images. You know, we feel like we have friends that we've never met, you know, based on the fact that they post a lot and you know, we see who they are through the lens a lot. I really believe that social media needs to be very responsible, and I know our players can be very critical even if they upload a picture of themselves. Like, I remember this season there was a picture, you know, one of our athletes scored a goal and they took a picture of the celebration and posted it on social media, and it was amazing. And you know, the first comment from one of the athletes in the picture was, "Oh, I look so fat in that." Like, that was the wrong angle for me. And you know, I actually sat with it and I was like, hey, you know, that was an amazing moment. You know, that's a memory you've created, and you're choosing to focus on something that, you know, one, is not true. I mean, obviously the perception is her truth, but you know, I feel like just something as small as that, you know, that picture is on social media, viewed around the world now. That criticism could have come from somebody else as a comment on that picture. And I do feel like our young athletes and just our young people in general, and some of the people who are not so young anymore, you know, there's still a lot of very social consciousness. So I think, you know, ad campaigns and then just generally people being very responsible on social media on what they post. You know, if I post a picture of I actually don't have any social media, so hopefully I'm saying the right words. Snapchat apparently is a thing. I don't know. You know, hopefully we're being responsible, you know, with feedback to pictures, and you know, we're viewing them through the memory rather than, you know, the image of what it looks like.
Yeah, social media is so pervasive. It's interesting how much young people pay attention to it, and how they sometimes gain their self-esteem from likes. But it does make sense to how we behave on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back, we talked about middle school girls and how they view themselves and moving into the recruiting age. and then what you do in your college program to make sure we're normalizing the language, including social media and the images that women and young girls have out there for them. Is there anything you'd like to add or something you think is most important that we need to get out there before we end our chat? Sue?
Well, one of the things that I speak to people about is, for example, when you're playing softball or baseball and they say, well, she throws like a boy, meaning they mean to say she throws well. And I think that there are many different types of pieces to our language that if we think about it, it started to change a little bit. I saw some t-shirts that would say kick like a girl, Mia Hamm. And I think that has changed a little bit, but I think the more that we think about the language that we use, and quite honestly, I think this is on both sides. I don't think we should say he dances like a girl, meaning he dances well. I think we should say he dances well, she throws well, rather than just using the gender to define it. I think the more that we do that across the board, the healthier our language is going to be for our young athletes.
Yeah, that's great. Normalizing the language is really an important part of making sure we are not browbeating our kids into looking a certain way. Do you have anything to add, Sarah?
Yeah, I think, when I first entered athletics, it was very empowering. I grew up in a different country where it wasn't that common for females to play sport. I know America's a little ahead of the curve. So I was on the boys' teams and I was playing the boys' sport and it was very empowering. I feel like there's been a little bit of a change in culture now where there's a little bit of power being lost from female athletics because we're moving more towards aesthetic aspects of female athletes. My thing is, the education piece really stressing, food is the body's fuel, and that fuel will, heighten your capacity to perform. If you really want to excel, you need the energy from food, and not just for your physical body. There's some research that suggests that emotional development can be stunted through lack of nutrient. We're all talking about the millennials and how we don't know how to control them and their emotions. Again, I can speak from experience. A lot of the times I, can trace back to maybe losing my temper a little bit quicker than I should have this season. I was like hungry, just basic, it's a basic human need to eat. And when you're an athlete, eating is not just for sustainability to keep you alive, it's to fuel your capacity to perform. So, really celebrating, take that extra slice of pizza, you're going to need it. Just re-educating people on, it's the food helps you perform, but it's also, it's an important bodily function and social, food's got a bit of a bad rep, and I would like that to be, re-educated.
And that's a great point. That food is fuel, because you think of food as the enemy, that extra piece of chocolate cake, or you think of it as comfort, and that extra piece of chocolate cake is going to make me feel really good right about now. So to think about food in terms of fuel is a really important one that we have to try to wrap our minds around. And then Sue, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, that's a constant piece that I have to give, that if you're the car, if you don't put gasoline in the car can't run. And many times that happens in mornings or before games, where the athletes don't want to eat a lot because they're worried that they're not going to feel well during the game, and then they can't make it to the second half, even as young athletes. So helping them to understand that it's fuel that makes them run, that makes their bodies run, I think is essential to their continued growth.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you both for joining us on this live chat. If anyone has any questions, they're welcome to ask them now, and we can wait a second to see if any questions come up. But otherwise, it was great talking to both of you. There are some really great insights. I didn't realize that kids as young as 6 think about body image. Mm-hmm. That is astounding. And that it's a process that continues throughout our adulthood, well into adulthood, as I still even step on the scale every day and think, oh, maybe I won't have any ice cream tonight. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any questions. And thank you both again.
Right, we were so thorough. We answered everything.
Right, we covered it all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Sue. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. And to everyone else watching out there, remember we try to normalize that language as it refers to body image and change our relationship with food.
Thank you, Raina.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sue.
It's-
I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, Raina.
Bye-bye.